Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of Script Notes. And I'm joined, as always, by Navian.
Hello.
And as you are doubtlessly aware, um, on Script Notes every other week, we bring in a special guest to talk about a script that they've written, and we just look at the script, see what we like, see what we don't like, and we go from there. Our special guest today is us. That's a turn up for the books.
Yay.
This is a script. This is a script called Monk. You might have seen it around on this channel and a couple of other places from time to time. It is a script that Navian and I wrote together a while back. I think it was back when you first joined me as a co-host, right?
I have no idea.
I mean, that seems like the sort of thing we would do. I think it was our first script that we wrote together. I think we've written a couple in total, but this was our first one and our defining one.
Indeed.
Why is it called Monk, Navian?
Mint plus honk equals monk, but that's the same spelling as monk.
Monk. Monk.
Yeah.
Monks in
exactly.
chat. But yes, so we're going to be talking about the script that we wrote today. How are you doing, by the way? Always nice to say hello to our guests. So I'm all right. A bit tired. Had a long weekend of at a board game convention. So that was quite fun. But yeah, quite tiring as well. How about you? How are you?
I am also all right.
Good. This is where we usually ask the third person how they are, but this feels weird. Anyway, we have a couple of monks in chat. One of them is you, but still.
And one of them is Jeffra. Hi, Jeffra.
Hi, Jeffra. Monk. We don't really need to go through the whole introduction to the stream where we ask the person that we've that joins us about themselves, because we've both done our own special episodes. I did one for Remembrance Week, and you did one for Horrifying Spectacle of Public Executions. So if you want to know anything about us, I'm pretty sure they're both on YouTube, so go watch them, I guess. But we can catch up a little bit on how things have been since then. Have you played any highlight games recently, Navian?
If my brain could conjure up highlights, I'm sure the answer to that would be yes, and I would give you something fun and interesting. But my brain doesn't work like that, so I have no idea.
Okay, in that case, because we usually talk about the person's first introductions to Clock Tower and so on, and we've got two people, both of us, who wrote this script. Why don't we talk about our introduction to each other, I guess, and
Sure.
the origin of both the mint and the honk.
Yeah, actually, that sounds really fun.
So I don't know if the word aware of is the appropriate phrasing, but I was first aware of you about a month or so before we actually directly interacted. I caught you a couple of games that you played on the Thursday stream when I was mostly playing the Sunday stream. And the same was true for you. You caught a couple of Sunday games that I was playing in and you weren't.
Yeah.
But in a game that you were playing, and that you later watched back and read through chat, I think I made a comment.
You did, and I don't remember exactly what that was, but you said something about liking mint.
Yeah, I said that mint choc chip ice cream is the best flavor of ice cream.
And at that moment, I decided, a rivalry is born.
And then I no, it wasn't then, was it? After our first game. So our first game together was a game
Oh, it
which
was during our first game.
it was okay, yeah, but the message that you sent me was after our first game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So our first game together, unfortunately, is lost to the mists of time.
It is very unfortunate, but if any of you remember the magician competition winning stream, where there was a double night one snake charming, and I was in fact involved in both of those snake charmings, this is the game that we were talking about. Game
Yes.
2 of that stream.
Ed was the storyteller in the game.
Ed and Tyler, yeah.
Ed and Tyler. Yeah, that's right. And it came after a game that Kat was on the wrong end of a snake charming, and then Kat was on the wrong end of a snake charming again.
Yeah, she unfortunately was a minion in both of those games. So yeah, sad times.
But this game was a matron game. And we were sat next to each other, which, not the last time that you and I will be sat next to each other in a game. It happens a surprising amount. But yeah, I was the demon in that game, or at least I thought I was.
Yeah.
And the first day of the game, I get pulled aside by you because you can only talk to neighbors. I'm like, okay, I've got my bluffs. This is fine. Everything is fine. But let's go from your perspective for a bit, because I think you were also the demon.
Yeah, I was the demon, and actually, hang on, I can post some links in chat to basically my and the snake charmer who snake charmed me on night one to our reactions. If you give me just a moment, I can pull those up.
Yes, Navian did not stay the demon for very long this game.
I did not.
First night became the snake charmer. Oh, is that from that game?
Yes.
I've never actually watched that clip. Send me that by DM, and I will watch that after we're done here, because yeah, that'll be fun.
So here's the other clip. Right. So these two clips are my and Chris's different responses to the fact that he had just snakes charmed me on night one. They're very different and really funny. Honestly, when I watched that stream back and I saw our reactions kind of back to back, it's just a truly hilarious moment. Yeah, so I was the actual demon that game. Ed came in and he gave me my bluffs and he told me that you were the lunatic. And I said, Ed, I need to ask you a question. Are you in a Leviathan game, because the demon does not kill, are you more likely to give a lunatic than you would with a demon who kills? And his answer was yes. And so I spent a couple of minutes trying to decide whether I thought I was a lunatic or not. And then I got snake charmed. And I knew that I was indeed not the lunatic. Because now I was the snake charmer.
That reminds me of a game I played, not at all relevant to this story, but a game I once played with Jack. Jack, some people might know Jack. He's taken a bit of a backseat recently, but he was on a bunch of the early streams. Yeah, I pulled the Vigor Mortis token in a game of catfishing, and then on the first night I got snake charmed. And then Jack pulled me to one side and just said, "Hey Leo, I'm the Fangu. You're actually the lunatic. We're gonna jump to you tonight." Jack was like the dreamer or something.
Oh, nice.
He hadn't picked me or anything. He just pulled a random player to one side and just said, "I know you're the lunatic," and I'm like, "Okay, Aggie, would you tell a lunatic that they've been snake charmed?"
Oh, that's funny.
Because it wasn't the fact that I had the demon token. It was the fact that I had the demon token and had been snake charmed that made my brain short circuit.
Right, of course.
But yeah, anyway, that game, the game where I was your lunatic, you could only talk to me and one other player that game, or at least on the first day, because of the evil matron, I think.
Yep, it was an evil matron.
So you pulled me to one side, and we just sat down for a chat. And do you remember what you said?
Not to the exact
Yeah,
words. I
just
definitely told you that you were the lunatic, though.
yeah, and I did not believe you. I thought that this was some big ploy to get me to out that I was the demon, and um, you know, just just out myself, and then I'd be executed, and it'd be sad, and I'd be embarrassed
Yeah.
and lose the game.
And it is understandable to be worried about that when somebody comes up to you and is just like, yeah, so I know you think you're the demon, but you're not. I was the demon and I got snake charmed and you're the lunatic. Like, that could be an absolute amazing play that somebody has
Right,
made. So, yeah.
it's perfectly fair play to me. Like absolutely, you go ahead, you do that if you think you can get away with that. I I don't know if that is a play that you would make, Navian, but at the time I didn't know you very well at all. So I was like, yeah, they're a good player. I've seen them do other things. They're a good player. They could absolutely be doing that. I'm just going to deny it. And I couldn't check in with my minions because they were A, on the other side of the table, and B, one of them was a magician.
Right.
Which now that I think about it, magician and matron is a fun combo because like the first giveaway for to find out who the magician is to just watch to see if your two of your three minions go and talk to each other. You can't do that with a matron, so that's
Yeah,
actually a fun
that's true.
combo. Um, so I went on for the rest of the game just being like, I don't know what's going on anymore, and I was the Leviathan, of course. So, or I thought I was the Leviathan, of course. So I couldn't. Um, I couldn't check. I couldn't kill people and be like, that person's not dying because nobody was dying. And you told me everything because you knew that I had to be good. I was the only person in the grim that you knew had to be good, right?
Yeah, because I had gotten my three minions because there was an actual magician and they did give you the magician, and so I also got the magician. So there were three players who I knew could potentially be minions, and therefore weren't the snake charmer, but any of the two of those three would be evil. And you were the lunatic, and that was like my starting point to go from.
And happily, I was right next to you. Um, then after,
Extremely convenient.
yeah, but then you wanted to keep up the pretense to your starting evil team. You didn't want to tell them that you've been snake charmed.
Yes. I also could not immediately speak to them because they were too far away.
Yeah.
Neither of my minions were my neighbors, nor they were each other's neighbors. And one of them also neighbored the evil matron. So I can tell you that they came up with a really, really fun evil plan to use the evil matron to swap, because one of the players was a widow. So they had the Grim and they knew who and where the cult leader was. Their plan was to move the cult leader in between the two minions, or in between, minion and evil matron, to force that cult leader evil, and then pit hag the cult leader into a minion.
I don't remember this part of the game.
Well, yeah, that's because you weren't in the conversation.
True.
This was a minion telling me what the plan was while I was keeping up the pretense with them. We had one day where the matron briefly traveled away. I think he had to take like a work call or something like that, and then came back into the game. So I got to talk to one of my minions, just the once. Got told, about this plan that they had hatched because they were all each other's neighbors. Also, the traveler conveniently solved for them the magician issue, because the evil traveler gets to know who the actual demon is. They're not affected by the magician, and there's a widow who knows that the traveler is evil, so they were just able to go to the traveler and figure out that I was the demon. So yeah, they hatched this like really ingenious plan, and I was honestly like filled with joy over this delightful plan of making somebody, like, if there was going to be a goblin play at some point. It was beautiful.
Bittersweet
And
pride.
yeah, and I was just absolutely crushed knowing that I would have to immediately betray them because I got told who the snake charmer was. So after I spoke with my minion, I knew exactly who we needed to kill, and I was so sad.
But before we got to that, you cooked up a plan that is, I think, the most relevant part of this whole story with me.
I don't remember that. What was the plan?
Where you decided that as part of your ruse, you would nominate me.
I don't even think that that was part of the plan. That was actually a different plan entirely.
Okay, that was a different plan entirely. There were plans upon plans here. And what was your accusation?
Alejo likes mint.
Yep.
Yep.
And thus, a rivalry was born.
Yeah, the plan to nominate you for liking mint, that was my plan from before the game even started. As soon as you had said something about liking mint, I was like, the next time, or well, the first chance I get to play with Alejo, I will be nominating them because they like mint, and clearly that is something only an evil person.
The way that you presented it to me during that game was like, here's all the information you need to know. I'm gonna like go deep cover and join the evil team. Also, can I nominate you because you like mint?
Yeah.
I always
that one was independent of everything else.
I always connected these two. But you were already scheming against me. I see.
That is correct. Yes.
Just to wrap up that little story. We hooked up again on, I think, day 4.
I don't remember exactly what day it was,
Halfway
but I
into
know
the
it
game.
was, yeah, about halfway probably.
And unfortunately, this conversation is also lost to time because it was a great one. Where I just pulled you into a conversation because I had worked out at this point that everything that you had said made total sense. You told me who you thought the evil team was. You told me what all of the plans for the evil team were. And I was just sort of tracking who was talking to who. You were talking to good players. You were talking to the artist who was able to confirm some stuff. So it's just like,
so yeah, my neighbor was a slayer, but the slayer's other neighbor was the artist, and
yeah,
so I went to the slayer on day 1 and was like, look, I know that this is going to sound ridiculous considering what happened last game with the night 1 snake charming, but hear me out. There's been another night 1 snake charming. And so the slayer went and spoke with the artist and got the artist to use their question to ask whether a snake charming had happened or not.
Yeah. And I was just tracking all of this and listening to what people were saying. And some of it like didn't quite make sense because the good team was still hiding some things from town. But most of it just fell perfectly in line with what you were saying. So I just pulled you to one side and said, so Navian, let's say, for the sake of argument, that I might have pulled a demon token.
Hypothetically, if I had pulled a demon token.
Ed was there for that chat, but unfortunately Tyler had stream. So it was not caught.
Oh, that's too bad.
But it was such a good conversation. I'll deny that this ever happened if you say anything, of course, but just hypothetically. So yeah, that was my first game with Navian. It was a hell of a game. We pulled opposite alignments, and that has also happened in like 95% of the game's sense.
Yes, it has.
But that is your deep cut monk lore for you there. And after that game, I got a message from you that was just like, "Hey, can we be long-term mint rivals, please?"
Yeah, it's so fucking funny, like being rivals over a completely bullshit, absolutely arbitrary reason. But like, I really dislike mint, and I really can't stress enough how much I dislike the flavor of mint, and I always have, and I get the feeling I always will.
Yep. I will never be able to win this war, but so long as we remain true to ourselves, what else really matters?
The joy is in the war having, not the war winning.
That is very true. That is very wise. War, if you really think about it, is pretty awesome. I think that's what we're saying.
Only if you're warring over something absolutely silly.
Yeah. Um, like the War of the Bucket.
Sure.
Anyway, that is your insight into the start of the Mint rivalry. There is one other part to the monk, and that is the honk. This is a story that I think you've told several times before. I think that's the first time we've actually given our perspective on the start of the Mint rivalry publicly.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, that's a bit of an exclusive for you. Um, the honk part of it is a little bit more common knowledge, I think it's fair to say. But this dates back to a stream that I was not involved and honestly, having watched the first 20 minutes of it, I'm glad I was not involved in. But yeah, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so there are some people who built a VR room that like it's basically the setting is Ravenswood Bluff. So they built a whole system that has like a grim on it, and the storytellers can pull people out of cabins at night for their like information. And yeah, it was really really cool. I haven't gotten the opportunity to play in the VR setting since, although I do know a couple of people who have. I kind of like want us to maybe someday return to that. I think it was really, really fun. So, um, one of the things that you can do in the VR program that we were using, which was Neos VR, is you can have an avatar. You have a little figure that is meant to represent you, basically, and they had a thing set up where you could basically like get a more or less like a default avatar from the people who had built Ravenswood Bluff. Like they built just this very basic kind of, here's your villager looking person. Um, and several people did utilize that, but I decided to spend some time prior to the stream. So basically, the time in between where I knew that I was going to be participating in this VR clock tower and when it was actually going to happen. I went into Neos VR and I was, just messing around with it because I like to have real weird avatars if possible. I am not particularly attached to the human form. I, to be honest, kind of reject it. If I could be something non human, I absolutely am taking that opportunity. So really what I was doing is I was looking through all like various, pre-made avatar options, and I was looking for monsters. And I unfortunately could not find one that I like really, really strongly connected to. There was one monster that I could make, but it wasn't available as an avatar. It was only available as like something you could decorate your VR space with. So I went with a sort of like large bug creature for the first game. But while I was looking through avatars, what I found was the horrible goose from Untitled Goose Game. And I was like, this is fantastic. I love this goose. And I couldn't decide whether I wanted to stick with the monster avatar or if I wanted to stick with the goose. And so I split the difference and I said, okay, fine. I will be the bug monster in game one, and I will be the goose in game two. And that is what happened. My avatar in the first game didn't really get a whole lot of comments I didn't see when I watched it back, but everybody seemed to really enjoy the horrible Gooseian. So yeah, that's the origin of how Navian became a goose.
Yeah, like I say, I never watched that stream because it gave me a headache, unfortunately. So I will, and I've tried to since because I think those games are on YouTube, aren't they?
I am not sure. I actually don't think that they are, which is really
Okay.
unfortunate because they were really fun and it was really, really cool getting to do it in VR. But you are right that unfortunately for some people, it does cause some like visual issues. It could give some people like headaches or make them kind of feel a little bit like motion sick. Personally, I tend to lose a sense of direction and also am more prone to motion sickness in first person views for some stuff, including VR. So what I did from my end of the view was I actually was able to put it into a third person mode so that like I was watching my avatar walk around, which doesn't cause me problems, rather than viewing in the first person. But I am like Ben was keeping his in the first person view, so you know, unfortunately, some viewers did also have issues with it.
Yeah. Different people have different requirements, right? I
Yeah,
I think Ben put his on third person, and I just could not, just couldn't. Yeah, Jeffrey, you thought you rewatched it on YouTube. I thought so too, but I don't know. Maybe it was on. Maybe I just caught the VOD a month later, or well, tried to catch the VOD a month later and gave up again.
it might be on YouTube. I am not 100% sure. I thought that I had looked for it on YouTube previously and hadn't found it, so I'm not sure. Maybe it was up for a while and then got taken down. I can try to check, but
Maybe. I mean, if anybody in chat finds it and wants to post a link to it, you can post links on my channel. So go ahead. If it's not there, though, it's not there. But yeah, that is the story of both the Mint and the Honk, and some good stories. You've been Murder Goose ever since. I think
indeed.
I think both of those are at least a year old, right? Or was Murder Goose early this year?
No, it's definitely was. I'm like fairly certain it was last year.
Yeah, time flies. Um,
It was in January, February, March, April, May, June, July. July. It was in July of 2021.
oh, that's so long ago.
Yes.
Anyway, yes, so that is the untold and also occasionally told stories of Mint and Honk. For those of you who weren't aware of such things. Before we talk about the script that led to, though, we have a thing that we do on this vodcast, which is what's your favorite base 3 script? Nathan, we've spoken about this before. Both of us have given our opinions before, but have yours changed?
Nope. Trouble Brewing still best base script.
Trouble Brewing is indeed the best base script, so that was easy. Um, I've actually made a something that I will talk about at the end of the stream, but that will involve people uh, in chat giving us their opinions on what the best base script is. But stick around for that because we do have an exciting announcement at the end of this stream. But yeah, that's for future us. Trouble Brewing is indeed the best of the base scripts. Um, so let's talk about the scripts that you and I built together. Monk. And well, which character, chat? Here's a teaser puzzle for you. A bit of a brain teaser. Which character do you think we based this script around? I'll give you 5 seconds to guess. Put your guesses in chat. If you guess Monk, Yeah, it was the monk.
Shocker of the year. What a twist.
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, we built the script that we decided to do together around the monk because that was one of our two is ship names the phrase? I guess so. Monk. Um, it was so we figured, what, let's build a script around the monk. You and I both, I think, really quite like the monk as a character. Do you want to talk about why?
Yes. Um, I think that so one of the things I like about the monk is that it requires you to get actively involved with other players. You cannot choose yourself, because at that point you're just making yourself a soldier, which already exists on the Trouble Brewing script. So they're trying to do something different. So um, you can't choose yourself, which means that you actively have to go out and talk with other players and get claims from other players. It requires a certain amount of interaction with each other, in order to have some sort of efficacy, right? If you're just choosing randomly, sure, maybe you'll get a save off every now and then, but like maybe you accidentally just saved the saint from dying in the night when they really wanted to, right? Maybe you just saved the Raven Keeper from getting to make a pick. Like being active with this role is really really helpful. And I think I really like roles that are like that. We can see it on this script. You can talk about it too with mathematician as well when we get there. But like, roles that make you get involved in the game. You can't just sit passive. Like you can technically just sit passively by and just do whatever you want independently with it. But it is significantly more helpful, and more productive for your role if you, engage with your fellow players and try to do something proactive with it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, the monk, I think, has another character that is nominally fairly similar to it, but I think that you and I, and it covers kind of all of the same things that you just mentioned, if not even more so. I think you and I both prefer the monk, and that character is obviously the innkeeper. Um, it has the same sort of thing as that you need to really take note of who you're picking. Um,
Yeah.
even more so for the innkeeper, because like you might end up drunking someone, which is harmful. But no, even in spite of that, despite the fact that the innkeeper picks multiple people, I think you and I still both prefer the monk as a character. Is that fair?
um I mean, it's context dependent. Like, it's very dependent on what else is on the script. But I think, like, overall, yeah, I probably prefer the monk.
And that's because the monk, while the innkeeper also does something that the monk um, doesn't do, in that it picks two people and drunks one of them. The monk does something that the innkeeper doesn't do, and that is that it makes um, players safe from all demon effects, not just the death.
Correct. Yes.
Which is where we come on to talk about the three demons that we chose for this script: the Lil Monster, the Imp, and the Vigor Mortis. Because that part of the monk's ability, they are safe from the demon, really comes into its own when you take it off Trouble Brewing.
I can agree with that. Yeah. So, like on Trouble Brewing, the only effect that the monk is protecting from is the kill, because that's the only thing that the imp can do. It doesn't have any poisoning. It doesn't have any like false information clauses. It is just flat out. You choose this player to die. No, you don't.
Yeah. Um, it can still be interesting with the imp, and we've put the imp on the script for a reason.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
because one of the most interesting things that can happen, I think, in a game of Trouble Brewing, is the monk. I'd say it's more interesting if it's intentional, but it's also interesting if it's unintentional. But preventing an imp from killing themselves.
Yes, which I've seen a couple of times. It's not very common, but it is interesting when it does happen.
Yeah, I've seen it both accidentally and I've seen it deliberately, and I think it's super interesting when town like we know that this person, one of these two people, are the demon. We'll execute one of them today and kill the other one tomorrow. And then the demon is just like, okay, well in that case, I'm out of here. I'm just going to Star Pass tonight.
Right.
Thank you very much. And then the monk is just there like, about that.
Yes, which I think is it's really interesting play for the monk to instead of just trying to find like the good strong players to help keep them safe. The other way to play the monk is to look for the suspicious players and see if you can pinpoint a demon and keep them from changing places.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but that's not the only thing that the monk can do. There are a couple of other characters that the monk works really well with, a couple of other demons. Um, one of those is the Nodashi, because it can prevent poison. But another one of those, we don't have the Nodashi on the script at the moment, but another one of those is the Vigor Mortis. Now, you and I obviously disagree slightly about what that means, but just in general, um, taking that to one side for a moment, what is it about Monk and Vigor Mortis that you like?
So the Vigor Mortis obviously has the additional ability of poisoning. So when they kill a minion at night, one of the minions' townsfolk neighbors is poisoned. So there's two things that a monk can do if they believe a Vigor Mortis is in play. One is sort of similar to trying to prevent a star pass. You protect somebody that you think could be a minion, and you try to prevent the Vigor Mortis from being able to kill them and poison anybody. The other is if you have a suspected Vigor Mortis poisoning in existence already, you can try to protect a player that you think might have been poisoned and remove their poison from them for that night so that they can potentially get some true information.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives the monk another reason to pick people that they think might be evil, similar to the imp, whilst also, you know, uh, making information more uh, true, which is always always an interesting thing that for townsfolk to do. Like just pick a single player and be like, you are going to get good information tonight, my friend, or you are not going to be poisoned tonight. Um, there's another demon in the Vortox that we also don't have on script that can be quite hit or miss with because it can be super interesting that one player can get good information. Obviously, sometimes that can be the drunk, but in this case, it's the player protected by the monk. But it can also, at times, create a chain of confirmation that just digs a hole that the evil team cannot dig their way out of.
Yeah.
So the monk can have some pretty rough or one-sided matchups with demons. Puka, much as I love it, is another one.
Yep.
Because the monk can protect the player twice. If if the Puka picks the person that the monk is protecting, then they aren't poisoned and will never die. And if the monk picks the person that the Puka picked yesterday, then they don't die and then become healthy. So the monk basically gets as a script that we still need to finish. Would say 2 bites of the cherry.
Yes. So yeah, Monk is definitely it's not the end of the world with Puka. Like it's not the worst interaction in the game by any means, but it does kind of make the Monk a little bit more powerful with the Puka specifically than it might be with most other demons.
Most other demons don't have too much of an interesting interaction with the monk because they don't have any harmful effects that aren't, you know, someone dies or lots of people die or nobody dies, and including you when you get killed. Um, but there is one demon that has a whole plethora of bonkers interactions with the monk, and that is our third demon, Little Monster. Um,
Indeed.
because the person that is affected by Little Monster is the demon, and as such, anything that they do, even if it's not with the Little Monster's ability, um, counts as being the demon doing that thing. And you need to be very careful if you put those two on a script together, because you can either nullify the monk entirely and just kind of make it pick a player, the storyteller chooses someone else to kill instead, Obviously, by my and your interpretation of the monk, um, the little monster can attack the monk protected player and nobody will die. But
Yes.
I don't like even with storytellers who agree that that's how that works. They tend not to because for whatever reason they just tend not to. I think that's fair to say.
Um, yeah, I think for the most part, storytellers are. I do take the wording on Little Monster of a player dies each night to be sort of like the other roles where that type of wording comes into play, which is generally speaking like the mare bounce and the gossip kill. When you read the almanac suggestions for those characters, it is noted that like you can bounce this to a dead or protected player, but most of the time you probably shouldn't. And I feel like it should hold true for Lil Monster as well. Most of the time, you probably shouldn't be bouncing to protected or dead players. You shouldn't be sinking the kill. But there are absolutely times that call for it. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that the monk should be able to do in a Lil Monster game is you should occasionally be able to hit the monk protected player.
Yeah. I think there's more of a case for it with the little monster than there is with the gossip, because the gossip is a townsfolk ability, and it should
Yeah,
be, and it like somebody needs to die unless it would end the game, or the good team are going to be working off bad info. Like
right.
if a gossip kill would end the game, then I think the storyteller is more justified in not killing anyone. But if your gossip is
Yep.
likely to end the game, maybe don't gossip. Um, but um, in the case of the monk, like that is the whole that like as much as it has that secondary purpose, the primary job of the monk is to stop players from dying.
Right.
So I think you might see storytellers use it once in a game, maybe. Protect player with the monk's ability in a little monster game. Because that feels like the sort of right. It feels like a monk should have an effect about once a game. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, like, I mean, we've all been in games where monks have unfortunately not been able to do anything. We've also been in games where monks have actually gotten more than one protection off, although that's fairly rare. Yeah, I would say if you plan on procking the monk in a little monster game, once is about right most of the time. It's obviously going to be context dependent because everything always is, but yeah, most of the time, once is about the right number.
Yeah. Um, but the monk. I suppose the secondary benefit of the monk is that they can find a player um, that they trust to be good and powerful, and just dare the demon to kill them rather than that player, right? Like you can be like, Slayer, I am protecting you publicly. You can claim to be the Slayer. I can claim to be the monk. When I die, you take your shot. But until then, you are not going to die this game. And the monk can kind of do that in
Yeah.
a low monster game. They can just be like, okay, storyteller, have fun. Not killing that player though.
Yeah. So I personally consider the monk protection to be essentially a twofold protection. Yes, part of its job is to try to prevent players from dying, but I think if you look at the monk as only ever being that, you're probably most of the time when you pull monk going to be a little bit disappointed because a lot of the times monks unfortunately don't get any saves off. The secondary protective effect of the monk is that what it says to the demon, or in the case of a little monster, to the storyteller, is if you want a specific player dead, you need to kill me first. Like, you have
Right.
to take me out of the picture. You have to either spend a poison on me, which then can't put, anywhere else at night. You can't poison any of the info rolls, or you have to kill me, and therefore you can't kill anything else. When you look at monk as being that type of protective as well, you are doing your job in more or less every single game that you are going to be in. Then you're forcing evil to have to deal with you before they can deal with other things, and
Right.
that is a quite potent power.
I think there's an argument to be made in Trouble Brewing that like when I pull the monk token, uh, I have done my job if I die in the night, like a Raven Keeper. I have protected somebody by myself dying.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, And I think it's interesting that there's I've seen a lot of usually intermediate level players with a spy go, "Hey, where's the monk? That needs to be my number one priority." And I think that's fair because you don't want to risk the not being able to kill anyone. But like, I think that is the monk doing its job, like, drawing all of the fire, just being
Mhm,
like, "Demon,
absolutely.
you have to pick me tonight. Have fun with that."
Yep, I have actually been. I was a monk one time in a game where I'm pretty sure I was put in like an investigator ping, maybe, or even if I wasn't, I just remember I got really. Oh, maybe it was evil bluffing investigator. I can't remember. But the point is that I was quite suspicious for a good portion of the game, which meant that I stayed alive. And we got to a scenario of Final Four where you have three suspicious players and you have one outsider who's really well trusted. And that just becomes the obvious person for me to protect. And so I didn't get any protections off until the end of the game, where I protected the outsider and we got to wake up with no deaths. Like, we went to sleep at 4, we woke up with 4, and I got to be like, ha, that's right. If you want to kill this player, like, you can't do it. You're gonna have to kill me. Like, you have to kill me, the person that you have made out to be incredibly suspicious all game. Good fucking luck.
And
I
then
can't. I think Evil ended up winning, but
yeah, and then the demon doesn't kill you and just keeps attacking that outsider, and it goes to Fiddler, and you're the one in the fiddle.
I mean, technically that's an option, but most people won't go with it.
Yeah. But yes, that is kind of a side job of the monk, I guess. But the the monk with the little monster, which was where we started that conversation, has a lot of interesting things it can do, and there's a reason why all of the minions on this script act during the night. Um, so let's go through them one by one. The Godfather with the monk. It's kind of the monk's traditional job, in that it prevents kills.
Right, yeah.
You've got the poisoner, which and the monk can stop a player from being poisoned. Which we ran the script on. I think it was on a Sunday once, and the monk and the poisoner just kept picking the Undertaker for basically all of the game, and the poisoner was the demon for most of the game. Um, and that Undertaker learned so much information that game, and
Yeah, I remember, and like we kept wanting to kill them, but we couldn't. Couldn't give him poisoned information because the poisoner kept holding. It was like, as soon as this poisoner is not holding this baby, this game is gonna like suddenly have a massive shift. But the poisoner just kept holding the baby.
yeah. Um, yeah, so that's the poisoner and the monk is a really interesting combo with Little Monster. The witch, um, the monk is again kind of doing the same job, I guess.
In a way, yeah. So what it does is it prevents the witch token from going down, which means that the player is never cursed in the first place. So even though the monk only protects at night, it does prevent the token going down for that night, and therefore the next day the player becomes safe, even though they're no longer, like, they stay safe basically, even though they're no longer monk protected because the token just didn't go down.
Yeah. How to confuse the hell out of a Serenovus who's holding the baby? Give them a monk.
Yeah, this poor Sarah Novus is like, wait, why isn't the storyteller executing?
And how to convince a pit hag that certain outsiders are in play? Give them a monk.
Indeed.
Uh, yeah. Um, so yeah, that's all 5 of these minions. I think the way that we've built this script have something interesting to do with the monk. I think the Godfather is perhaps the least interesting of them all, um, because it only wakes like every third night, maybe. Um,
Yeah, it's not a regular wake rate, and also the odds of you picking the same player that the Godfather chooses on the same night where they're also holding the baby is probably the lowest of any of the minions.
yeah, but just like anything else that can happen on the script, the threat is there.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you can be like, okay, so we've got 3 outsider claims, and we executed 1. Then we only had 1 death in the night. Was the Godfather holding the baby? Did the Godfather hit intentionally sink the kill? Or is one of our outsiders lying?
Or did they hit a goon?
Or did they hit a goon?
And even from the Godfather's perspective, right? It's like, did I just hit a monk protected player, or have I turned a goon?
They could, of course, also have hit the soldier. That's another one on this script that is safe from the demon, much like the monk.
Yes, also true.
So yeah, that's how those 5 minions work with your monk. But you mentioned the goon, so let's have a chat about the outsiders. And we're straying a little bit away from the monk here, but I think that the monk once again has done its job. It's drawn all of our focus in the early podcast, just as the monk is supposed to do. And
Good
now,
job, monk.
but now we've dealt with it, we can move on. You talk about the goon. A lot of these characters can, or these evil players can choose players. Not too many of the good ones can. There are a few. You've got obviously the monk itself, the snake charmer, the preacher, and I suppose the seamstress once per game. Do you think there is enough on the script to keep the goon good?
I would say that if you're planning on putting a goon in, you might want to curate your setup, maybe even a little more than you usually. Like, I do think that you should always on customs be curating your setup. Don't get me wrong, but even maybe a little bit more than usual, paying a little bit particular attention to, okay, how many choosers do I have on the evil team? How many choosers do I have on the good team? I will say that one of the things about the players who choose on the good team is that all of them, actually, does the snake charmer go before all of the minions? I can't remember.
No.
I think it.
The snake charmer and the seamstress both go after the poisoner.
Oh,
So,
okay.
So does the monk. So does the monk.
That's true. Yeah. So all of these choosers on the good team do go very early in the night order. Yeah. So preacher goes first, and then poisoner would get an attempt, and then monk or snake charmer would. So
yeah,
because all of these choosing rolls are very, very early, and most of them go pretty significantly before a lot of the evil rolls, there's a pretty decent chance that if they find the goon, if they get that goon claim, they can lock the goon good if they want in a majority of games. Now, to be fair, if there's a poisoner who has not been preached, a poisoner could lock them evil. But I think again the fact that there's maybe not a whole lot of choosy rolls on the good team, but the ones that we have go very early, and they can pretty much dedicate themselves to making sure that goon is good if that's what they want to do with their ability. Yeah. So I think that kind of balances out a little bit. But again, it is something to keep in mind when you're making a game with this script, is how many of which team are choosing.
Yeah. For sure. I think another thing actually that we didn't mention with the monk is that if you're the monk and you choose a player and they die, then there are, I think, 4 reasons that could be. Yeah, I see 5 reasons that could be. They could have died to they could be the Tinker, first of all. They could have been killed by the Godfather. They could be the grandmother. You could be poisoned by the poisoner. I suppose they could also be the goon, actually. You turn them good and then the demon kills them. Or it could be Pit Hag Arbitrary Knights. So the person that you pick dying, I think, also tells you quite a bit about the game.
Yeah, that may sound like a lot of options, and maybe in a vacuum it is, but when you're actually in the game and you have claims from different people, I think that it probably, like, the context of the game that you're in will give you some strong hints about what you think would have happened there. If a player claims to be, I'm the goon and I died good, great. You can pretty much believe that. A lot of times if a goon is dead, you have to question that, again, especially because a lot of these minions on the script do pick, and they pick quite early. So it's entirely possible for evil to try to coordinate to get an evil goon dead. But you, as the monk, if that's the player that you picked, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm the goon, and I died good," because why wouldn't a good goon come out after they're dead, right? You can kind of verify that, and I think that's really helpful. So there's certain of these, like a tinker saying, "I'm the tinker." There's no reason for them to hide that. Some of these things here will be very, very traceable, and when you ruled those out, you really only have like a few options left, when you've ruled out the some very specific scenarios, right? Yes, could be Godfather, but your number of outsider claims might help you decide whether you believe that's the case or not. And it feels, like you can kind of decide between, do I think it's more Godfather killy, or do I think it feels more like I was just poisoned?
Yeah.
And also vigor poison.
Yeah.
Has anybody died nearby you at night? And if the answer is no, then you know that it's not likely vigor poison.
So I looked it up, by the way, and the order is Preacher, Poisoner, Snake Charmer, Monk, Witch, Cerenovus, Pit Hag, Demons, Godfather, Seamstress.
Yeah, so there's one good roll that can go before any of the evils. There's one evil roll that goes before the other two, like consistent night choosers. And then those two go before any of the other evils, right? So like I think that's a pretty decent dispersal of like when each of these choosing roles gets to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the goon and the characters that can turn the goon. It's definitely something to keep an eye on if you ever want to storytell this script. Your setup choice.
I actually think that can be extended not even just to the script, but any custom script where you see a goon on there. If you plan on putting the goon in play, probably just be really aware of what you're putting in with regards to how many picking roles there are and when they go for each of the teams.
Yeah. And even to a lesser extent, because most of the characters do pick, but even on BMR, you need to look. You always, just as a storyteller, just know what you're putting in the game.
Yeah.
I think TB is one of the few scripts where you can really truly randomize. But even the other base three, I think that you want to be careful what you're putting in.
And even with Trouble Brewing, like I do agree that it is the script that can hold up the best to just hitting random and go. But like you can still get some kind of jankiness out of it, right? If you have a game where like you have just both, like let's say you have a really small game and you have both a monk and a soldier, that's probably going to be a little bit difficult for the evil team, because there's a strong chance that one or both of those get to proc in a small game, and in a small game that can be devastating. If you have like both an empath and a fortune teller, in a small game. Again, these are like, the smaller the game, the more impactful I think the roles are going to be, whether they're in play or not. So probably the smaller the game, the more you need to be careful about how you're curating. And I think that's true even to some degree of Trouble Brewing as well. But it does hold up the best.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's fair. Let's talk about then the mutant. It's a natural pair to the Cerenovus, and it's on the script because, I mean, let's be real, it's mainly on the script because it's my favorite character in Blood on the Clocktower.
Right.
Which I suppose kind of segues us into the Recluse, which I don't know if it's your favorite character, but I think it's your favorite outsider in Blood on the Clocktower.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
But it also does a lot with a lot of these characters.
Right.
On the good team, it's always interesting to put with the empath. It's kind of I don't want to say it's necessary for the empath, but it certainly makes the empath. It's certainly a balancing tool for the empath.
For sure, yeah. And it's also, when you're giving it as a bluff to the evil team, a balancing aspect for that as well. For
Right.
when an empath is sat next to an evil player, but you've given them recluse as a bluff, and so they have this plausible deniability.
I think it's very possible to build empath scripts without a recluse, but having a recluse in your back pocket certainly makes the empath a lot easier to build around.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the other characters that you probably want one of if you're building an empath script are the Vortox and a super funky demon. Like, well, I suppose the Vortox is a super funky demon, but like a super funky demon, like the Leviathan or Riot, to make the empath work.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else are we looking at? The Recluse interfering with here. The Undertaker.
Yeah, that's a classic.
And the Chef, to stick with the TV motif.
Also a classic.
Yeah. We've also got the Seamstress on the script.
Yeah, so a recluse. I've been the seamstress who on night one decided to check two people because the very first game that I played on TPI, we created like a trust circle between the three of us on day one, and it worked out really great. And then I just like, yeah, I'm a seamstress. I can check these two people, and we can recreate our trust circle. And of course, it turned out one of them was the recluse, so I got a no, and I was like, oh no. It did help end up confirming the recluse because they had like multiple pings on them, but yeah.
Yeah. I suppose that's kind of the job of the recluse in a sense. Steve wrote his balance on Blood on the Clocktower blog post that you can go and read if you just Google that phrase, I guess. Where he talks about like the concept of how outsiders work, and like the idea is that a townsfolk is supposed to be of benefit to the good team, but super powerful if played well, or if in a good situation. Whereas outsiders are supposed to be a drawback to the good team, but a benefit if played well.
Right.
And that's kind of the Recluse doing that, right? Because it's kind of acting as a lightning rod to attract all of the evil pings, and then you're just like, that person has a lot of things saying they're evil. They're definitely good.
Yes. And like I've seen that happen where it's just like, there's so many pings on the same player that they just have to be the recluse at some point, right?
Yeah.
That's also something that you often hear about, like, okay, if you put a recluse in an investigator ping and then you have a fortune teller who's gotten a yes on the same player, and they can sit there and be like, look guys, I can't be both a minion and a demon. And like in reality with an imp, like technically, yeah, you can if those weren't checked on the same night, but it helps.
Yeah, you can be the minion pinged against the red herring. There are ways it can happen, but yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Recluse.
Well, you could have just been Star Pass too.
Also true, but even if it's on the first night, it can still work. But yeah.
Yeah, it is, but like it feels like a lot, when it feels like it's just sort of piled up. You can just kind of concede, like, okay, the most likely scenario is you are in fact just a recluse.
At a point, you just have to Occam's razor it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. The next character is one that I still go back and forth on, and that is your Oracle.
And I personally love.
I don't love it. I don't hate it as much as I used to. I understand that there are ways of playing around it. I think it's fine, depending on how the script is built. And
I think
we built the script together, and I was not a fan of. I was even less of a fan of Oracle with Recluse than I am now. I think so. You had to talk me into allowing those two characters to be on this script together, and the fact that you were able to do so means that I think it works with the script.
Yeah, so like one of the things that I kind of do like about like the Oracle Recluse interaction is twofold, but for sort of the same reason, but from both the good and evil side. One of the things that, to be fair, with more experienced groups, this meta tends to kind of peter out over time. But especially with newer groups, newer players, well, they're still sort of figuring it out. The recluse gets executed early a lot, and they get executed early to sort of like, let's just get this, point of contention that is confusing information out of the way. And of course, there's always the world where this is just evil bluffing recluse, right? That's also a potential. But I like when there are mechanical reasons for somebody to fight against their own death, even as an outsider. So a recluse in this scenario can be like, look, I'm just a recluse. I've heard of an oracle claim and I've heard of an undertaker claim. I'm, as far as I know, I'm not sat next to near a recluse, so there's no point in killing me. I'm just going to screw up, these powerful night information rolls, and that's true. So I think it sort of helps people realize that maybe killing the recluse isn't always the best idea, but also, again, from the evil side, that's something that they can bluff. Evil can use those to maneuver their recluse bluff towards, yeah, I'm just a recluse, but here's why I want to stay alive. Because one of the things that, can tip people off to, oh, this is an evil player, is how hard somebody is fighting to stay alive. And especially if people think that socially the amount of like fighting to stay alive doesn't match what their claim is, when those seem to mismatch to most people, where oh, if you're good, then you would just like die here and let that clear up some worlds. Whereas when you have an oracle and you have an undertaker, those can be some pretty strong incentives as a recluse to be like, no, please don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. I just don't like it when it actually happens. But I agree that tension there is good for the game. But you can't have one without the other, unfortunately. Mullabok, Oracle is one of the more benign interactions for sex and violence roles that Recluse messes with. Yeah, definitely. I think that you originally proposed Town Crier for this script, which
I have no idea.
Which I was even less thrilled about, because yeah, you can ask someone else to nominate for you, but at the end of the day, that's kind of taking away a part of the game. But yeah, Oracle
and
is
of course, Flower Girl is the worst.
Flower Girl is the worst. Well, Savant can be the worst.
Savant can be the worst depending on your storyteller, I suppose. But in terms of just flat out mechanics, I think Flower Girl is the worst.
I agree. Town Crier, I think, is still a step too far for me on most scripts to put with a recluse. But yeah, cool. So that is oh yeah, finally the noble. How do you see recluse with noble? I personally think it's not necessary, like it would be for an investigator, or not necessary, but I would be a lot less keen to put a recluse in a noble ping as a good or as an evil ping, than someone else might. I think, just with the way that I personally storytell the game.
Yeah, which is fine. I think that just the recluse being on the script adds, again, a certain amount of plausible deniability, especially when you're giving it to the evil team to make, to use as a bluff. There are some people don't like putting the recluse in the noble ping, and to that, all I have to say is it's the recluse's job to fuck with information. I don't know what to tell you, but you do occasionally, if you have noble and recluse on the script, you are indicating to your players that you are probably every once in a while going to put a recluse in the noble information to make the noble information less reliable.
Yeah.
I don't see how it's really that different with regards to making an investigator's information unreliable by putting a recluse in it sometimes. Like sometimes you do that. Not all the time. It probably shouldn't be every time. But yeah, every now and then you put the recluse in a noble ping. And every now and then you have that recluse be the evil register, and maybe if they figure it out, and now they have 3 good names, which is really strong info. Or you don't. You register the recluse as good there, and you let the group try to figure out which way you've done it.
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. Which means that the last character that interacts with the recluse is the Vigor Mortis, or at least
Yeah.
I suppose the imp interacts with the recluse. Let's not worry about that. And I suppose that technically the pit hag interacts with the recluse. Let's not worry about that. The Vigor Mortis.
Kill a recluse, get a free poison.
Yep. And you just know that when we run the script, we will be running the script on Saturday, by the way. More on that later. Along with our other announcement, which I alluded to earlier. More on that later too. But you just know that when we run the script, we're going to put a recluse in, we're going to put a poisoner in, and then we're going to be sad because we wanted to do something fun on the first day, and now we can't do the fun thing.
It always happens every time. I don't understand it. Just poisoners have like recluse periscopes or whatever, recluse scopes on their
So here's a question for you. If the poisoner poisoned the recluse, let's say that we intend to give the noble the recluse as an evil player in a 3. Would you then ping the mathematician? Because you could, but you don't have to. But like in this scenario, we have made the decision that we are going to register the recluse as evil, but we then can't because of the poisoner.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't, only because I think that I think it's one of those like hidden technicalities that technically, I guess you could ping the mathematician, but it doesn't feel very good to do it because the reality is that the noble went from having wrong information, which would have pinged the math, to having right information.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't ping the math.
I think that the only thing that would lead me to being like, yes, you should ping the mathematician is because we have decided that this is what the recluse is going to do, and the poisoner's ability has then meant that the recluse can't do that, which we were fully intending to do. So like
yeah, I do understand that, and like if somebody were to make that decision in a moment and I don't get a say in it, then I would simply have to accept that. And I do accept that that is a reasoning. I just think that it feels bad, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, fair enough. How about the mutant claiming mutant when poisoned?
I also wouldn't ping the math there because so the way that I think math should be looked at is it shouldn't be based on what you as the storyteller were planning or would have been able to do otherwise, but rather the hard mechanical aspect of did this ability malfunction, and that doesn't really look at would have beens. It looks at what actually happened, and a mutant not getting executed despite claiming mutant is not a malfunction, or sorry, not their ability working out normally, because it's always a might ability. The noble getting correct information isn't pinging the math because they would have gotten incorrect information otherwise, because all the math is looking at is they got correct information. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
I do think that both ways of looking at that are fair. I think they're both. I agree that some people wouldn't like.
I do think that they both have logical. Yeah, they both have logical reasonings that you can track and are technically acceptable. But I think one feels bad for more people, and therefore I lean towards the other one. If that makes sense.
But like you say, there are also people to whom it feels bad to put the recluse in a noble ping, for example.
I mean, that's just a basic interaction, though. Like
Yeah,
we're talking when we're talking about things like, oh, a mutant who's poisoned and claims mutant and you can't execute that, like that is doing the math based off of what the storyteller might have been able to do, and not like there's no mechanical way to look at the storyteller and be like, yeah, you absolutely would have done that, and therefore that's what's pinging the map, right? Like
so so what you're
you
saying
can't
is
track what could have been.
so what you're saying is we need an artist on the script to ask that exact question. Would you
No.
have would you have executed the recluse? Sorry, the mutant. Yeah, no. I think my perspective on that is I don't know. I can completely see your point. That it it's not solvable, so it's like you can never know.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
not solvable
but
within the
I
mechanics of the game. It requires like speculating about what the storyteller would have done, and I don't think that feels within the right realm, and it doesn't feel like the intention of the math there, if that like makes sense.
but I also see the point that there are the clock tower isn't always solvable. Sometimes sometimes the storyteller can and should, or maybe I don't know if should, but can fairly look at what they know about the game that the players don't know about the game, which includes their intentions. Um,
I can agree that not every game needs to be like solvable necessarily, but I do think that certain things at the very least need to be some amount of like trackable and traceable to the actual mechanics of the game.
like here's
Like,
a,
roles like maybe Savant or something are where you could start getting into more theoretical aspects, but the mathematician is a pretty hard mechanical role, and I think if you start getting into the uh, could haves with a mathematician, then it just doesn't feel very good.
yeah, like I say, um, I completely get where you're coming from, but I also completely get where someone who says no, the recluse only didn't do this thing because the poisoner did this thing is coming from. So yeah, I kind of sit on the fence. Let us know what you think on that one, chat. But I like I say, I
Yeah,
completely understand your perspective, Navian.
I think from like a hard rules as written stance, I technically also sit on the fence, but um, I mean, I obviously fall on one side of the fence when it comes to more along the lines of rules as intention and also rules as fun.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, chat. Let us know what you think about that one. Um, that just leaves us with one outsider left to talk about, and that is the Tinker. Um, the Tinker can do a couple of things on the script. Not quite as much as it can on BMR, but it can do a couple of things. Um, it can, at its most basic, I suppose you could just randomly kill it and feed a Godfather, maybe, or
Yeah.
imply that you're feeding a Godfather, while actually they're not being a Godfather and play to feed. Always funny. You can uh, kill it during the day to simulate a witch curse while having the side effect of doing the above.
One of my favorites.
If the other outsider or an evil player claiming to be an outsider dies during the night, you can kill it to signify a Godfather kill that just got unlucky. Um, and finally, you can use it to suggest a demon change.
Right.
Um, I think that the reason that we originally put it on was because we both love Tinker Witch.
Quite possibly, yeah. That is probably to me one of the fun and funniest interactions for the Tinker to have.
Yeah. I recently had a game of I think it was this script um, that I ran on the unofficial, where the Tinker just nominated every single day, and I didn't want to kill them, but by the third time you just kind of have to.
Yeah.
And they told me after the game they were baiting me into killing them. Like they were making sure to nominate every day so that I would do it. I'm like, fine, we've got a Vigor Mortis kill Godfather. I suppose you can give them a kill if you want. Um, yeah, that was a game where the Tinker did that. How do you feel about the Tinker implying a Pit Hag demon change? Because the Pit Hags The reason that a pit hag kills 2 people is so that the good team have a signal that a demon has changed. On SMV, if 2 players die in the night, unless there is a barista in play or some other non, well, I suppose the harlot as well, or some other non-SMV minion that
Yeah.
traveler that kills, you know for certain that a pit hag has changed the demon.
Right.
On scripts where you can have more than 1 kill in the night, that's no longer true. Or a bone collector that shows a dead Fangu. Why a Fangu? It can be any demon. Yeah.
I think probably because Dead Fangu is the most commonly dead demon that you're going to have in SNV. Technically, yes, it could be any because the pit hag changes themselves or the other minion into a demon, and so the original demon dies. But the Fangu has its own death involved built in.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But I suppose where I was going with that is, how do you feel about the pit hag signal no longer being as clear a signal as it is on SMV?
Yeah, so we actually have it less clear in both ways, right? One of the ways that a demon change is potentially signaled in S and B as well is the No Death Knight, which can actually be that one can be faked by evil by sinking a kill. But you know, just to cover all our bases here, we do have both a monk and a soldier, which could also potentially sort of make it seem like it is a pit hag signal. That is a thing. So yeah, I think most of the time I probably wouldn't use a tinker to make it look like there has been a demon change when there hasn't. But it's not entirely off the table. I'm less inclined to do it unless I feel like evil might be struggling like super badly, and maybe doing the pit hag change, like a fake pit hag change, might help evil a little bit more.
I suppose the counter argument to that is that none of these demons drastically change the game. Like, there's no Vortox where the good team
That's
now
yeah,
know that they
true.
need to now know that all of their information is going to be wrong. The best you can really do is put a little monster in or out of play.
Well, so I think what you'd be doing with the fake demon change is not necessarily about how drastically the game might change based on the demon type, because you're right, it really won't. I think what you would be attempting to do there with that fake change is implicate one of the players who died as being evil, um, and uh, and to make it seem like the demon has changed places.
True, that's true. Although with a on a low monster script, the demon can always change places.
I'm sure, and an imp can always star pass as well, but
Yeah,
you know, vigor mortis can't.
Vigor Mortis can.
Or like, what if it is a, you know, I don't know. What if it is an imp, and then the minion decides, this imp is gonna die anyway, and yes, maybe they'll star pass, but actually, I think a little monster would be better for us from here on out, right? Like, yeah.
So I suppose my argument, or the counter argument, wouldn't necessarily be like what it does there, but it would be, put simply, the demon change is less significant, so it doesn't matter that the demon signal is less clear.
Um, yeah, for the most part. Like, I mean, like you said, there's not anything massive going on here with regards to the demon type. Whereas, again, in S and B in its home script, like the Vortox has a clause that you literally, as a good team, you lose the game if you don't execute. And so if you have information pointing either, you know, like towards or away from a Vortox quite hard, and then there's a demon change, you know, especially if your information was pointing away from Vortox being the case, and now there's a demon change, and maybe the ongoing information is no longer available, or it's, you know, too muddy to tell from the middle of the game out whether it's Vortox now or not. There's a strong incentive to really, really, like, the good team needs to know that, because they need to know if they absolutely must execute a corpse on, say, like 4 alive, right? Whereas on this script, it's not going to be quite as consequential as that
Yeah.
with
And I
regards to the
suppose
demon type.
and I suppose there's also an argument to be made that it's not always that clear on S&V. If the same demon has changed, nobody dies. And you know how
True.
much I love to sink a kill in S&V and kill nobody
Right, to make
just for
people
fun.
think that.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's the biggest issue to kill a Tinker to signal a Pit Hag demon change. And like Gambling says, there are other ways it can happen, like the Godfather, like the
Yeah,
Grandmother, but they do all have traces apart from the. I suppose the Tinker has the trace in that it is the Tinker,
that
but
it is the Tinker, right?
at the same time, the reverse is also true. In the Pit Hag demon change, you might kill the Tinker because it is the Tinker.
Right, exactly. Like, oh, the evil is way on the back foot, which is why they have had to completely change who the demon even is, and therefore, let's just kill the Tinker to obscure how much this is a demon change, right? Yeah, like that's definitely an option.
Yeah. People in chat have been talking about bone collectors. Last time I played with a bone collector was at an in-person game where Aggie was the bone collector, and she picked me as the flower girl that had on a day after everybody voted. Um, and the day before that, everybody had also voted, so I already knew it wasn't a Vortox game. But she picked me and claimed that she was confused about what I was, so that she didn't have to pick the exiled um, harlot, which was quite funny.
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, that's our outsiders. Unless you got anything to add on the mutant, we kind of skipped past that one.
Sorry, which one?
Mutant.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of hit on it. It's a mutant. It's there because mutant is fun, and mutant with Cerenovus is, they go along really well together.
Yeah.
A Cerenovus could self Cerenovus and make it seem like a mutant, or well, technically, it could Cerenovus any evil player to make it seem like a mutant. They don't have to choose themselves there, but yeah, like they could choose to Cerenovus an evil player who's not the demon, break the madness and make a mutant claim, or they could try to hunt a mutant and try to make a mutant mad as an outsider to sort of cause them to explode.
Yeah. I think the biggest power move on this script is to create a good Godfather. I will not be taking questions. Um, as the Pit Hag. Yeah. So that's our bottom 12 done. So let's talk a bit more about and one of our top 13. So let's talk a bit more about the rest of them. We've touched on the noble.
Yep, mostly it's interaction with the recluse specifically.
Yeah, and we've touched on the chef. We've not really spoken about the grandmother. Um, what do you think that these three uh, top four characters specifically add to the script?
Um, yeah, so uh, Noble and Chef kind of can pair up decently together. The Noble knows that one of their pings is evil. To be fair, they are largely the way that Noble plays out is that it is largely about the fact that you are confirming two players, not that there is one evil in there, but like part of the game is solving your noble information and which one of these players is evil, and then you can use chef information to help you sort of build worlds from there. The grandmother obviously is a good confirmation role. And their drawback is that so they know exactly who their grandchild is and what their grandchild is. They don't have to talk to multiple pings or anything like that. With the drawback being, of course, that if the demon kills the grandchild, then they die with them. What the grandmother specifically adds, as opposed to other confirmation roles like the washerwoman, I don't know. To be honest, do you remember our reasoning?
Yeah, I think it was something. I think it was partly because we wanted the Godfather on the script for the outside manipulation rather than the Baron because it's more interesting with the monk and the Vigor.
Mm-hmm.
and that meant we wanted a couple more characters that caused nighttime deaths, and the grandmother is the right balance. Like a gossip kills
Yeah.
too much and confirms itself too easily, whereas the grandmother confirming itself, it kind of can, although Godfather can sink kill into themselves um, if they have some reason to, if two evil players die in the night for whatever reason.
Yes, but I would like to let you know that your audio, it sounds like your microphone is just sort of like gently rubbing up against fabric or
Okay.
something.
Thanks for letting me know. Is that better?
Yes, that sounds better.
Yeah. So I think we decided that either the grandmother or the gambler will be just the right level of extra death.
Yeah.
It's also got the interesting interaction with the title character, the monk, in that the monk can protect it and know if it died to its own ability or not.
That is true.
But like they can't do that reliably like they can with a gambler. They have to rely on the demon killing the grandchild.
Right.
The last time I actually played this script, I had a monk as a grandchild, um, which I think is a fairly interesting pair because the monk has somebody that they know that is good that they can protect, but they if they do so, then they're not protecting somebody who's gaining information over the game, and
Right.
they can't protect the grandmother from its own ability, even if they are the grandchild.
Correct. Yes.
So yeah, that's I think that's why we put the grandmother on
Yep, that makes sense.
there. I personally think the chef, because you didn't really talk about that one too much. I think that's more interesting with the recluse than the clockmaker, personally.
I think they're both interesting in their own ways.
Yeah, um, they are, but at the same time, the reason that I think the chef is the more interesting one is because the clockmaker recluse gives such specific info. Um, yeah, they both point at two players, but I don't know. It it's just the fact that the uh, the clockmaker cares about the number of steps, and like the way that that's been ruled is that if the recluse is sat on the opposite side of the grim to the minions, then it can't be involved in that. Whereas I don't know, for the chef, it just feels fuzzier for the chefs for me. Whereas like the recluse can be too much of a too beneficial for the good team, I think, with the clockmaker under the wrong circumstances.
I think that for both of them, it just really strongly depends on the seating. You know, there's plenty of times where a recluse does absolutely nothing with regards to the chef number because it's not also not sat near any of the evils.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just feel like it gives uh because look at the other situation is where you have a pair of evils next to each other, and so the chef gets a one, and then you start executing the recluse as good neighbors. I feel like that's um both easier to pull off, but also less like it just feels like it's more trusted, perhaps than the clockmaker, but also less damaging if it's true. I don't know. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think they're both interesting in their own ways. So
Gambling asks if the minions choose to give the soldier the baby, do they lose? No, they don't, because holding the baby is not considered a harmful thing. Um,
indeed, it is in fact probably a great thing for a good player to become the demon because they know exactly who you need to kill to win.
as Mullerbox says, realistically yes, but mechanically no. Yeah, I think that's a fair description without a Scarlet Woman or a DA on the script. Um,
Yeah.
there's no real reason for the evil team to ever give the baby to a good player here. Um,
I think the only reason that I would do that is like when you're going into the final day and everybody thinks they have the game solved, but they're not really sure. And maybe there's one good player of the three who are, the three players who are going to make it to the final who has enough suspicion that you throw the baby on them. And then when they get to have to come out as being like, yeah, I'm good, but I'm holding the baby, maybe people suddenly start to pivot on thinking they're good or not. But like, yeah, that's kind of like a bit of a Hail Mary desperate
yeah,
situation.
yeah. Um, but let's talk about the soldier since it's been brought up. Um, what what have we got with the soldier that we don't have with the monk? Um, well, the soldier forces the vigor mortis poison to go in a particular direction, I suppose. It's just
Yeah,
like,
the soldier
no,
can
I will
definitely never
never,
have. Yeah,
I will never be poisonable by the likes of you.
indeed.
Um, yeah, the soldier can also never be affected by any of the minions if they're holding the baby, which is
Yep.
also interesting for the witch, for example, because if the witch picks a player, if the monk picks a player, uh, and the witch who isn't uh, holding the baby curses that player, and then the witch gains the baby, that player is no longer cursed until the monk's protection wears off, which is the end of the night, at which point they go back to being cursed. Whereas if the
Right.
whereas if the witch gains possession of the child, but cursed the soldier, then that soldier is safe.
Right. So I think so. The monk's main function is to be a thorn in evil's side in a very specific way. And the soldier's main function is also to be a thorn in evil's side in a very specific way. And ostensibly, you think those are the same way, but they're really kind of not, right? The monk's ability, as we talked about before, is either prevent good players from dying instead of you, in two ways: one, by straight up protecting them, or two, by forcing the demon and or poisoner to deal with you first. The soldier's ability isn't necessarily about soaking up the kills, although you can maybe go for one. And with a monk on a script, you could maybe try for multiple with like a really strong bluff and pretend with some other good player that you were actually just monk protected when you weren't. But most of the time, I would say the soldier's task is um, to try to just gain trust, because unless evil has that poisoner specifically, and the poisoner is not holding the baby, because if the poisoner is holding the baby, that soldier is safe from them. But yeah, without a poisoner, or I guess a pit hag can change a soldier out as well. You do have a witch who could kill a soldier again if they're not holding the baby during the day, but the soldier also has to nominate. So a soldier who's playing carefully can simply like, their point is to try to make it to the end of the game, because evil really has to put in some work to try to take them out. And again, if you're drawing the poison to you, if you're drawing the pit hag to you, you are preventing some other strong player, some info roll out there from getting hit by those things instead. But yeah, a soldier's main job is just, I am most likely going to make it to a final three. I need to get everybody's trust so that this becomes a 50-50 instead of a 33-33-33.
Yeah, um, and that's why soldiers that have been seen by confirmed, like that are confirmed, are so powerful. Whether that's
Yeah,
washerwomen or grandmother
absolutely.
confirmed soldiers. So be careful about doing that, but that's a thing for TB as well.
Yeah, again, it's something that you should absolutely be doing every once in a while. You do
Yeah,
need to, like, every single role that on Trouble Brewing should be able to be washerwoman confirmed at some point. That includes soldiers, and that includes mayors. But it also means that maybe you want to do something to balance that, right? If you're going to washerwoman confirm your soldier, or in this instance, grandmother confirm the soldier, then maybe you want to put in that poisoner so that if evil catches wind of A, the fact that these players are backing each other up and people are trusting them, and B, what that role is, they can potentially, make that choice to deal with it, right?
yeah, yeah. So that's why the soldier is here. We'll go there and go up a little bit. The farmer I'm pretty sure would have been a choice of yours, because if
Probably.
people know you and know your script building habits, and I hope they do, if they've been watching script notes for a while, know you love a character that wants to die during the night to the demon, or in general, as the case may be with a farmer.
Indeed. I am a big fan of Ravenkeeper, Sage, and Farmers.
Um, how do you feel like characters that want to die in the night interact with the storyteller choosing kills?
I think that if you're going to put one in, you should absolutely be killing them at some point, or at the very least, that should be in your potential plans. You don't necessarily have to every single time, because, of course, there are games where you have Raven Keepers who never get targeted by evil, even without a spy. Like that just happens. You have games where sages never get hit by the demon. It happens. So you don't have to kill them every single time you're putting them into like a low Mazda game, but like kill them sometimes.
Yeah. Um, yeah, for sure. How about the farmer as an evil bluff with the pit hag?
Also a fun one.
I think the easiest way that that's likely to happen on this script is the Vigor Mortis kills the pit hag, who turns a good player into the farmer.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely a fun way to do that.
Yeah. You can you could even, if you're able to time it well and find things out about the game, you could even poison kill a farmer and have the pit hag or the poisoner or whatever character be the middle step in the ring.
Yep, you absolutely could.
Yeah, you got options with farmer as a bluff on the script. I think that you don't
I do agree with
always need.
Molbach that it still feels at least a little bit problematic for evil. Like, I really enjoy the idea of evils infiltrating that farmer chain, right? Of somehow inserting themselves, whether that's by creating an evil farmer and having the demon kill it at the start, or combo poison pit hagging to put an evil player into the middle of the farmer. To like however you want to do it. I'm a really big fan of evils infiltrating that. But when you do that, um, you do need to make sure that you are in some fashion clearing the demon, right? Like you have to be bluffing maybe some sort of active information role that is clearing the demon somehow. Um, Otherwise, you're going to run into trouble because your dead minions being a part of a trusted farmer chain is meaningless if you can't use it to help protect your demons. So you do have to be pretty active in what worlds you might be pushing when you do that.
Yeah,
And also, there's a strong chance that I mean, now Evil knows exactly where the farmer is now when they have inserted themselves into the chain. So Evil does get to make active choices about like who to kill. Whether they want the farmer chain to keep going or not. But it does also mean that you are going to have a farmer in the final, right? At some point, almost certainly. Like there are some ways around it. Again, you can pit somebody out of being a farmer. You could make them Serenovus mad so that somebody can't claim it. You could try to witch kill them so that they aren't going to pass at night. But
yeah.
it
I think
definitely does sort of limit some of Evil's options once you start that as a plan.
yeah, I think there are interesting things that you can do with a pit hag and a farmer. But there are times when you need to be careful.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so that's your farmer. Um, the seamstress. We've talked about it with regards to the recluse, um, but do you see it doing anything else interesting with any of these other characters?
Sorry, which one?
Seamstress. We'll start at the
The
bottom, go up.
oh yeah, okay. Um, yeah, so we've touched upon how seamstress might interact with either goon or recluse. Uh, otherwise, yeah, not hugely. I do so. One of the things when I'm taking Sex and Violet's characters out of their home script that I like to keep in mind is the fact that on its home script, roles that get in particular binary information of yes or no, right? Those kinds of roles. What makes it questionable for them is this a Vortox scheme when I got my information, or is it not? So you need to have plausible, like you need to have some level of unsurety when you're taking them out, because like if you don't have anything that could cause the seamstress to get bad info, then they just know that they're getting good info every single time on a script. That's really strong. To be fair, yes, a lot of games in S&B it does get solved about whether it's a Vortox or not, but I have seen games where it's never been solved, and seamstresses aren't actually 100% sure of their info. So I really like putting in things on custom scripts that don't have a Vortox. I like putting in things like the Recluse to, something that you kind of have to choose on whether you want to go early and risk hitting that, which Molbach and I both talked about earlier about having done on a night one seamstress check, or whether you want to try to hold on to it and try to what's the word, like play around it some. And of course, goons are not likely necessarily to come out super early, so there's always a chance that you have hit a goon and you're not sure. And there's a poisoner too. So, and again, one of the risks of holding it as a seamstress on this script, similar to in S&B, is what happens if you didn't start vigor poisoned, but now you are. That's unfortunate. So, there's a certain incentive to maybe use it slightly early, but there's also incentives to use it maybe a little bit later as well.
Yeah. That's it's always interesting to see that tension between going early and going late, and I do think that this script does kind of manage it decently well. I want to circle in on what I think is the biggest problem character, but we'll keep going up for now. Undertaker. Undertaker on the script finds itself without a Vortox or a spy. How do you, which means that it should be decent at confirming itself. Do you feel like that's a problem?
Um, Maybe, but I do also think that this particular set of minions is strong enough that probably it's not that big of a deal. Um, but that also relies on Evil being able to figure out who an Undertaker is. I think an Undertaker looking at this script would try very, very hard to hide themselves, because they are going to be pretty decently confirming of themselves, right? There is no Grim Peaker who they could possibly be. They're not a spy or a widow. If they were able to cold call your role, they're probably just the Undertaker, like they say. But if Evil ever catches any wind of that, they have a lot of ways to take it out, right? A Godfather can just kill them. A Poisoner can hit them and screw with their info. A Witch can curse them, which, to be fair, like Witch and Serenovus can sort of always be played around to some extent by the player who's been targeted by either just not nominating or playing into the madness. But I think some of the game is knowing sort of like when you need to nominate anyway, in spite of the witch, and maybe just sacrifice yourself potentially. Or knowing when to actually just break the madness. Yes, get executed, most likely, but like sometimes the information that you have is stronger, more powerful, and more important for town to know than to hold on to for the sake of madness. Knowing when to do those things is really important, but also sometimes you can miscalculate on those. And of course, the pit hag can also just completely get rid of the Undertaker.
Yeah. That's fair. I think that an Undertaker that can hide could do pretty well, but
Yeah, absolutely.
the little monster is an answer to that. Obviously, that's not the case in the Emperor of Vig, although most people die in the game of Blood on the Clock Tower, so usually, even if the Undertaker hard confirms themselves, they'll be dead by the end of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, um, we've touched on the Oracle with the Recluse as always. Um, but all three of these demons, which is even more than in S&V. All three of these demons will kill evil players or might kill evil players,
Right.
which is why the Oracle is here.
Yes, and that's always an interaction that I think is interesting with Oracle is giving the Oracle more than one reason why they might have their numbers going up, and even their numbers potentially going up quite early in the game.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, this is an S&V character, so on S&V, the explanations are your Nodashi poisoned, maybe if a Sweetheart died super early, Sweetheart poisoned, but that's less likely. It's just a Vortox game. You successfully executed a minion on day one. The Vigor Mortis killed one of their minions, or Fangu jump. Like there's actually quite a lot of reasons why an Oracle number would go up quite early.
Yeah. I think that the Vigor Mortis is the most likely explanation for a day one tick. But there are a lot of explanations.
Yeah.
We've talked about the monk at great length, so let's move on to the snake charmer. People might be, yeah. Sorry, you're doing your snack. Snack. We've spoken about the snake charmer as a controversial character. That we have spoken about in great detail. How do you feel it works here?
I think there's a really big yes but don't in the Snake Charmer Recluse.
Yeah, there's a reason why we didn't talk about the snake charmer when I was going through interactions with the Recluse.
Yeah.
And we talked about the pit hag when we were talking about interactions with the Recluse.
Yeah. So I would say, other than that, yeah, there's probably not a whole lot really to say about it. It could keep a goon good if it really wanted to, but we talked about that earlier. I guess that's maybe like a pretty decent option for a snake charmer who doesn't want to risk the potential of becoming the demon, and doesn't feel strong or comfortable with their own ability to social read to not pick a demon. That they might go goon hunting instead.
Yeah.
Which is not helpful if the demon decides to bluff goon and you get the goon claim from them. But
I was going to say a snake charmer goon hunting and a snake charmer demon hunting are kind of the same thing.
Only if the demon bluffs goon.
I mean, you're kind of relying on the goon outing there then, because otherwise goon hunting is just picking blindly.
I mean, yes, but I don't know. I've seen a lot of goons that out at least halfway through the game, right? Like if you're a goon and you get halfway through the game and you haven't been turned evil, then you're probably almost certainly outing there. So
what did you just put in chat?
That's a snake.
Ah, I see. Oh, I see it.
Yeah, it's got a little tongue. Its tongue is out.
I see it. I thought Spanish stepped on your keyboard.
It is a snake.
It's a snake. Okay. Mathematician. Mathematician is doing an interesting thing on this script, in that it's not just, or it's not even primarily looking at good characters, because
Hang on, I made a better snake. Oh no! It combined my equal sign and the last like triangle to make for the tail. It just combines them into one symbol.
Yeah.
That's extremely rude of you, Twitch. I did not ask you to do that.
Well, I see the snake. Yes, mathematician is kind of looking at evil characters as much as there's good characters here. It's looking at good characters to detect the poisoner, the recluse, the even the I don't know. I suppose there's a couple of weird things that we talked about earlier. Like 3 of these outsiders are might um, abilities, and people can have
Mhm.
their own opinions on that. But it also looks at the demons and demon holding minions acting weird with the monk around. Like the
Right.
poisoner poisoning the person the monk protected, for example, would ping the mathematician.
Right. Yep. It looks at misregistration as well, which can only come from the recluse, but it can see that. But yeah, I think the mathematician's most interesting, thing here is detecting, in particular, like the little monster interactions with the monk or the soldier. But also, it can also help detect with the pit hag arbitrary knights, because anytime there's a pit hag arbitrary deaths and you're doing either no kills or multiple kills, it means that the demon's ability has not functioned correctly. So you can actually combine the mathematician with your multiple deaths, and track whether that is likely to have been a demon change or not, right? Because if you have multiple deaths and that mathematician gets a 0, well, you know that it wasn't a demon change then.
Do you know that?
Yes,
How do you know that?
because the demon couldn't kill correctly.
I mean, it can, because the storyteller can choose to let the demon's kill go through and then add another one.
Oh, I guess that's true, but
But yeah, it can certainly help to track a demon change if the storyteller doesn't let a demon kill go through.
yeah, okay, it can help you.
Yeah. Um, the preacher.
I would
Oh
say
yeah,
that most of the time in Demon Arbitrary Death Knights, most of the time storytellers don't kill the players that the demon chose, right?
yeah,
Because either nobody's dying because it's the same player, so nobody's dying, or multiple people are dying, and that includes the demon themselves, or right, because now there's 2 demons in play, so you kill one of the demons. So most of the time during a Pit Hag Arbitrary Death Knight, you're probably not going to be killing the exact same players that all the demons chose, and therefore,
yeah. That's fair.
most of the time it's going to tick up the math.
I think it's most likely to happen if both of the demons happen to pick the same person. You kill that person, one of the demons.
Yes, which is a pretty niche scenario. It can
That's fair.
technically happen, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's it can happen. Be aware of it, but usually the mathematician will differentiate what happened on a night of multiple kills.
Yeah.
Um, preacher. Actually, before we finish off this script, if because we've had quite a few people join us in chat recently, if you haven't been here for this whole discussion, first of all, do stick around because we've got a fun thing coming up that we're going to be talking about when we're done here briefly. But also, do go back and make sure you watch the VOD of this if you are at all, if you have any investment at all in the Mint Wars, because Navin and I started this stream by, for the first time, publicly giving our um, behind the scenes story of how that all started. So do go back and check that out when you're done watching this, because you can't check it out now because it's not a VOD yet. But also, like I said, stick around because we will have something to talk about later. And also, thank you all for joining us. But yes, let's have a chat about the preacher. And in particular the minions that it's been paired with here, because it's not been paired with any. Okay, well, first of all, talk about how the preacher works with Lil Monster, because we kind of need to talk about that. And that is, there is no funky interaction. The preacher doesn't disable Lil Monster, the Lil Monster ability, if the preacher picks a minion who is holding Lil Monster, because they are treated
Correct.
as 2 separate abilities for
Yes, the preacher is
the
only
preacher.
disabling the minion ability, not the demon ability that they happen to also have at the same time.
Yes. Um, and the other question, it's kind of obvious, but we'll touch on it anyway. The preacher says that a chosen minion, loses their ability. The Vigor Mortis says that a chosen minion keeps their ability. Preacher wins.
Yes.
Um,
Basically, like, so the Vigor Mortis chooses a minion, and they die, and the Vigor Mortis is saying, "Hey, you're dead, but you still get to keep your ability, and you get to keep using it." And the Preacher says, "For as long as you have an ability, no, you don't."
Yeah.
And that's why the Preacher wins out, because one is saying, "Hey, you get to keep this," and the other is saying, "Anytime that you would have this, you don't."
Yeah. And that's true regardless of the order. So if the Preacher picks a player and then the Vigor Mortis kills that player, they lose. They don't have their ability. And if the Vigor Mortis kills a minion and then the Preacher picks that dead minion, they don't have their ability.
Yes. Also important to point out that regardless of what order that went in, that minion, if the Preacher were to become poisoned or to die, that minion would have their ability restored.
Yes.
Well, it's poisoned only temporarily, so if they become, sober healthy, if the Preacher becomes sober healthy again, they would once again go back to being preached. But once the Preacher's dead, then permanently the minion would be able to get their ability back.
Yes. So that's just a couple of technical things to just to just to be aware of. A Preacher sweeping up after every demon kill sounds very funny to me. That is quite funny.
Yeah.
I do like because a Preacher doesn't have to choose a living player. So I think it is quite interesting for a Preacher to choose dead players that they suspect of being minions that have been Vigor killed here.
Right.
I had in the game that I was talking about earlier with the Tinker that baited me into killing them. Um, the Godfather in question was in a double claim with the Preacher, so I kind of expected the Preacher to pick the dead Godfather, but they didn't.
Alas.
Alas, indeed. Although I do remember a game on Connecticut not too long ago where I was the Preacher, and I just ran out of players to preach and just started picking the most random players. I preached myself. I preached a dead player without a Vigor Mortis on the script. I preached the same player twice in a row because I just completely ran out of players to pick. Do you remember that one?
I don't, but that sounds like something you would do.
Yeah, it was something that I did. It was the game where I was nominated by the Golem on the first day, who was Widow poisoned.
I still don't remember. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Well, maybe someone in chat will remember that game. I think Tamfana was the golem in question. Oh, that wasn't a stream game. Okay, that wasn't a streamed game. Never mind. But yeah, that was a fun game. Well, it was a bit of a tense game at times, but it was a game. Anyway, so yeah, the Preacher with these minions. How do you feel about them?
Yeah, I mean, these are all some really strong minions, right? And I think a Preacher is a counter to the fact that we have some really strong minions on here.
Yeah, they're also not public minions. There's no goblin. There's no
Right.
psychopath. There's not even a boom dandy.
No
So
twins.
so I think the closest that the Preacher is going to be able to get to having an obvious pick is if you've got one too many outsider claims, maybe pick all the outsiders, and you've probably deactivated the Godfather.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but that's about the best you can do as a Preacher, as well as obviously picking on double claims. But you've got a mutant to kind of cover for that a little bit, and the Serenovus. Um, but yeah, the Preacher is going to have a good time in terms of the minions that they're deactivating, but they're not going to be able to find the minions too easily. And to give you the example there, in that game I ran of this on the unofficial a week ago. The Preacher lived late into the game and didn't find a single minion all game, which is a little bit sad, but
Oh, that is so sad.
it is. But it also kind of shows that I think that the minions and the Preacher work together quite well on the script because, like the Preacher never has an optimal play, but if they manage to hit, they hit well.
Hmm.
You don't have the incident that you've spoken about, at least with me, quite a few times, with a Widow that can cause a mid-game Widow ping that can't happen for another reason.
Right.
Like I don't like the Preacher as a character very much. Like it's fine. Um, I think that the DPD characters are some of the more rough around the edges characters that we've seen so far. But I think we've managed to make it work here.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest complaints about well, there's a couple of complaints about Preacher that I think are decently valid. One is that you don't really have any idea if your ability has worked technically. You can maybe get some amount of idea, right? If you have the wrong number of outsider claims for the what is base, but you believe, but not so wrong, like it's only off by one, then yeah, sure, you can think that, yeah, you probably have a godfather, and if one of those outsiders ends up getting executed and then there's no kill, maybe that's a hint that you hit the godfather. A poisoner, you won't be able to track at all whether you've hit. A witch, you can only get by inference of there was a witch kill earlier in the game and now there's not, but again, like that could just be coming from maybe the witch got executed or maybe the witch is just unlucky. Probably the Serenovus would be the easiest one to track in terms of potentially having hit, and maybe a pit hag, but pit hags and Serenovus can both choose to bury their ability if they want in order to potentially try to frame somebody, so it can be hard to know whether you've actually had an impact on the game or not. Now, personally, I think that's fine because when you do have an impact on the game, it is a pretty big impact. And I think it's okay you're not necessarily knowing during the game whether you've had that or not because the evil team fucking feels it. And that brings me to the other complaint about Preacher, which is when you're a minion and you get preached on night one and you don't get to fucking do anything and then like you die and you've never gotten to have any impact on the game, that's really not that fun. And I've seen both of these situations happen, right? I've seen a preacher who is struggling in the game because they're like, I don't know if I've even been able to do anything or not, and I'm not having fun because I don't feel like I'm contributing. And I've seen night one preached minions going, well, this fucking sucks, and then they die before they get to do anything. And so I think it is an ability that is really quite powerful, and I do think it is a great kind of countermeasure to when you have a really strong minion suite and also when you have little monster and therefore are going to in some of the games on this script have more minions in play than you otherwise would normally, but you know, I can see why some people have issues with it. Personally, I kind of like it, but you know, that's just me.
Yeah. I think that's all very well said. How do you feel about the Preacher Asterisk Club?
I think that's fine. I think that it would probably be helpful in terms of balance and in terms of like making sure that the minions at least get like something to do in the game, even if they get hit on night two. At least they got one chance to maybe use their ability or, you know, learn whatever. See, you know, if you're a widow who's been preached, like see the grim and poison somebody for one night before it gets shut off, right? I do think that the each night asterisk is, yeah, I could see that being a potential pretty nice improvement. To be fair, I don't know where like Preacher's planned expansion script is, and I don't know if there's a really strong reason therefore for it to be not an asterisk, but at the very least with the minions that we have out currently, probably an asterisk would help alleviate some of that.
Yeah. We will see over the coming years, I'm sure, how that one turns out.
I will say, I also think that Preacher has another yes but don't with the Recluse, which is that technically you can tell a Recluse whom the Preacher has chosen, you can wake them up and say, you know, you've been chosen by the Preacher, but I don't like doing that.
Then they immediately regain their ability.
Right, exactly, because they stop registering as a minion and therefore they become unpreached. But I don't like doing that because it confirms two good players to each other using an outsider ability, which is not a very outsidery of it.
It only confirms one good player to the other.
Yeah, technically, yes.
And I can tell you why it does that. Because I don't know if I've told you this story before, but I've mentioned it to a few people who are in chat at the moment. But I once had a game. I've never registered the Recluse as a minion to the Preacher, but I once had a game where the Preacher told the Recluse, told a minion that they were the Preacher. So the Preacher knew who the minion knew who the Recluse was. Sorry, the Preacher was. And then that night, the Preacher was like, "I think that player is good, but I'm just gonna tag them anyway, just to be safe." They're claiming Recluse, so there's no harm. And then the next day, and then I sent that player a message saying, "The Preacher has selected you. You have lost your ability." And then the next day, that minion took the Preacher into a side conversation and just said, really excitedly, "So I'm actually the Recluse, and I got picked by the Preacher, so I know that you picked me, and I know that you're good, and this means you can trust me as well." And the Preacher shouldn't have trusted the minion.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Like a minion could try bluffing that, but I don't know. I think it's one of those things where it's like you should, if you know the storyteller well enough, you would probably be able to successfully meta that like the storyteller wouldn't do that to an actual recluse, even though that does block off, technically it blocks off a bluff path for evil. I think that's fine because I just don't like using outsider abilities as a way that actually helps the good team, and hard confirmation really helps the good team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's a less of a yes but don't than some Recluse things, but I do think it would be a weird situation in which I would allow the Preacher to preach the Recluse. A very
Yeah,
weird situation indeed.
yeah, I agree. Maybe if there were like a heretic on the script, I might be a little bit more open to doing some real weird shit. Or if there was an atheist on the script, again, would be a little bit more open to doing real weird shit. But barring those roles on the scripts, I'm not terribly inclined to do that. And if I had an evil player who was bluffing that, and somebody asked me whether I would or not, I would probably just answer with I can mechanically do that, because I wouldn't want to like it doesn't feel good if you like to blow somebody's bluff, right?
Well,
It's up to the players themselves to decide whether you as a storyteller would actually do that. The only thing I would answer is mechanically, yes, I could.
and for the benefit of any of our players who are watching this that might be playing in a game involving that we're going to be running of this, yes, we would absolutely do that. Don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I think that just leaves us with one character left to really talk about, which is the Empath, which we've already talked about with regards to the Recluse, because that's how we did this.
Right.
But I think there's only one bad matchup that the Empath has, which is against the Vigor Mortis. Because the Vigor Mortis
Yeah.
can't move unless it's got a Pit Hag, unlike the
Right.
Imp and the Little Monster. And like that Vigor Mortis is probably going to be executed at some point in the game, right?
Yes, I can agree with that. I do think that the empath is necessarily stronger with demons that cannot possibly move at all than against those that can. Vigor has some amount of counterplay to it, which is if they have a minion nearby, you can try killing the minion and hope the empath gets poisoned. But that is reliant on the seats being in certain places, and that's not always going to happen. In fact, most of the time, it probably won't work out that way. You can hope that maybe you've been given a recluse bluff, but that still might get you killed because the empath might be, well, it's early, we have time to kill good players, let's just get you out of the way so I can get a read on, a more reliable read. Yeah, I do think empath is stronger against demons that can't move.
Yeah. I agree with that. Which brings me on to the next point that I have, looking at this script. How would you feel about replacing the Vigor Mortis with a Nagashi?
Okay, so that definitely does up where our poisons could be coming from. So a Nodashi with a poisoner is quite strong. That's three different players who could be poisoned at any given time. To be fair, a Vigor Mortis with a poisoner is also quite strong. So not probably not the end of the world. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any particularly difficult interactions with the Nodashi.
So here's my thinking.
I'm not really seeing any. So
Here's my thinking. Just to explain like why I suggest this. It solves the empath problem. Because yes, the Nodashi
Yeah.
can't move, but like, so what? The empath,
But the empath is poisoned, so
yeah, unless the empath has a bunch or a dead townsfolk between them and the Vig, sorry, the
yeah.
Nodashi. At which point you're getting into the mid to late game anyway. At that point, the Nodashi can probably just ride out a few days.
Right.
So it reduces the risk of that. It I think it has some interesting, as we saw with when we were talking to Lachlan a few weeks back. It's interesting with soldier or monk and mathematician in its
Hmm.
own way, because a player not getting poisoned pings the mathematician. Um,
Yeah.
the minions that we've got work well with the Vigor Mortis. Um, so like it's not a script where we need to get rid of the Vigor Mortis. The Poisoner is a bit strong with the Vigor Mortis, but it's fine. It's not broken.
Yeah, I agree.
Godfather may be a bit weak with the Vigor Mortis, but again, it's not broken. It's perfectly functional, and like I said, recently had a game where it was quite strong. Um, and I can't see any other characters. Like there aren't many characters on the script that are like, I know that I'm permanently poisoned, right? Um,
Yeah.
I suppose if the Snake Charmer picks anyone, but that's everyone, but that's unlikely to happen at least early to mid game. Uh,
Right.
the
And when you have a snake charmer at the end game, like you get a snake charmer who's in the final four or final three, being like, "Guys, I've picked everybody alive." Like that just sounds evil.
Yeah,
Like they are pushing very explicitly a world where they have been poisoned for like potentially just one night where it really mattered, but probably for the entire game. So they're pushing a very specific world, but also it still just sounds so evil.
yeah. I think Nodashi and Poisoner is very strong in a small game. So
Yeah.
that's the flashing neon alert sign that I can see. Um, but like when you're getting into 2 millions, I think it's probably okay. Um,
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Other than that, I don't really see any major sticking points for the Nodashi. I suppose the only real rough combo that it has is if it's sat next to an Undertaker. Um, you, as a storyteller, you then have to choose between confirming the Undertaker and not using the Nodashi poison, and also potentially giving a mathematician game solving info, or
Mhm.
tanking the Undertaker's ability and pointing straight at their neighbors.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I do like Vigor Mortis plus Godfather because I think that the Vigor Mortis -1 and a Godfather +1 causing some amount of confusion to the outsider count is really interesting, especially because there's some amount of outsider hiding here. Like, obviously, a mutant is unlikely to come out while they're alive, although technically they could, but they're just unlikely to. A goon also unlikely to come out unless they maybe get about halfway through the game and haven't turned at all. Then they're probably coming out. But an evil goon who ends up dying evil, unlikely to come out. But they might, you know. So I do like the -1 +1 that you can get with the Vigor Godfather. Because I personally just think that's interesting, but I'm also not opposed to changing a Vigor out for a Nodashi.
Yeah. Um, the other character swap that I want to propose will be to remove the goon, just based on the we've spoken about like the positioning of them makes it less terrible, but just the sheer number of good players that don't choose.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would replace it with though.
Okay. Well, let's go over our options. I don't think Acrobat is a good fit because there's not enough like good places for like good poisoning. Basically, there's just not enough ambiguity about poisons, and especially if we're going to swap out for a Nodashi, an Acrobat could end up tracing that. So fuck the Acrobat there. We do have a Pit Hag, so we could consider maybe a Barber.
Yeah,
That would actually allow any demon to potentially get away from an empath if they wanted.
Yeah, it would. I quite like a barber.
Yeah.
We're gradually building this into more and more sex and violence, but that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, Sex and Violence is a solid script. Butler is pretty much a generic outsider that you could probably just put anywhere and it would work.
Disrespect on the butler.
That's not a disrespect. I like roles that can kind of just suit anywhere.
Generic. I see how it is. But go on.
I didn't say that. I don't want damsel because I don't want a huntsman, and I personally always enjoy pairing them because I think I've talked maybe about this before. I don't know if I've talked on here about it before or not, but I like the dynamic that the huntsman adds to the damsel as a role, or at least the potential for a damsel to play differently. So I personally like having both of them at the very least on the script. So if we're not going to do huntsman, which I don't think we should, then I probably wouldn't do damsel.
Interestingly, I think the only naked damsel script that I've played has been yours.
When have I done that?
Your Riot script.
Oh, right. Okay, that's Riot is very, very different. So
yeah.
Most of the time I wouldn't do that, but yeah, I would obviously for Riot. That's its own unique thing. Maybe someday we can go over a Riot script. Actually, High Stakes Betting does have a huntsman on it. Ha.
Oh, does it? Cool.
So, never mind. I've apparently never done it.
Sure.
Okay, so let's see. I don't think we really need a drunk. I think we have we've got a poisoner, especially if we're going to be doing a Nodashi. I don't think we need a drunk, although I guess we could consider maybe, like, goon causes drunkenness. So if we put in either a drunk or a puzzle master, it does change that dynamic because the goon is only a sometimes drunking, but I think those are options, but maybe not the best.
I think I'm down with the barber.
Okay.
Are there any other characters that, after discussion, you think that maybe we should change?
Is there a reason that we went with Undertaker as opposed to Cannibal?
None that I remember.
Because I think that would be pretty much the only thing where I might be looking at with a slightly critical eye of an Undertaker who does successfully hide can really be quite devastating, and there's not really a whole bunch of counterplay other than Evil just going like, that player is evil and they have just bluffed super, super well, which may or may not work. But, you know, it feels like Evil is going to have a much more difficult time bluffing Undertaker, whereas Cannibal has a certain amount of, like, built-in deniability to it of, oh, you were just poisoned, which I think, like, you were self-poisoned, basically.
Yeah. I think that's a fair swap. Cannibal in for Undertaker. The Undertaker does look a little bit odd one outy over here.
What does?
Undertaker, like you say.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just quickly revisit Farmer. How do you feel about the Farmer compared to the other two options in the Ravenkeeper and the Sage here?
Yeah, so I think Sage mostly plays really good on screen.
We've lost you.
Oh, can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what happened. I guess it just stopped registering that I was hitting my push stop button. I think that Sage plays really well with Vortox for obvious reasons, because you are getting two names, and if that player dies early, then there's always enough time to just kill the two players, and that would be really rough if you don't have some of that, like, potentially you've just learned two people who definitely aren't the demon and you might want to keep them alive instead. So I probably wouldn't lean towards Sage here. I think Ravenkeeper could be fine instead of a farmer. I don't think I have a particularly strong leaning one way or the other of, like, farmer versus Ravenkeeper, but I do like Farmer, but I also like Ravenkeeper. So
Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying the farmer needs to be changed. I'm just wanted to talk about why we went for that one. If we've changed our minds at all, but I don't think either of us particularly have. Anything else?
okay, so we said maybe try a cannibal instead of an Undertaker.
MRAM21 asks, could trade out one of the minions for Spy Widow if you want to keep Undertaker. I think I prefer removing the Undertaker. And one big reason for that is that I don't love Spy Widow with Snake Charmer, and I particularly don't love them with Little Monster Snake Charmer.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I personally like them with it because I think it gives that the minion who's looking at the Grim and potentially like what to share with the demon or with their other minions. I think that's an interesting thing for that minion, but that's fair.
But also, I think these minions just work so well together on the script.
Yeah, I agree. And also, like a big thing, like the script is based around the monk, and I think these abilities play more interestingly with the monk, especially with the little monster, specifically, than maybe a spy or a widow would. To be fair, you could temporarily shut off a widow's poison if you protect the widow poison player while the widow is holding the little monster token, but I think probably I also would prefer changing out the Undertaker for the cannibal instead of changing the minion.
Yeah, I think we're agreed on that one.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Okay, so let's see. Let's go over the changes again because I am already forgetting. We had swap Vigor Mortis for Nodashi, change Goon for Barber, Undertaker for Cannibal. Was there one more?
Don't think so. I think there was 3.
Okay. Yeah, I think I quite like all the other things here. I could probably be convinced to swap grandmother out for something else, but I also don't mind it. Like, again, if we were to swap it to, like, say, a washerwoman, you know, not having anything that looks at the Grim, not having a spy that the washerwoman could ping off of, or that spy that the washerwoman could be, I think makes the washerwoman inherently a little bit stronger, whereas the grandmother has the drawback built into their own ability of that extra death. So I still think if we were going to go the route of having one role that confirms other players, I think I still prefer grandmother here.
Yeah, I agree.
But like, if we wanted to swap it from a confirm another good player into something else type ability, I could probably be convinced of it, but I'm not sure what it would be. So I'm also perfectly happy just leaving it as it is.
Yeah. Okay. In which case, I think that is everything that we need to talk about on the script. Now, when will we be running this script, Nathan? Because it won't be tomorrow.
Indeed, it will not. So we have tried to maintain a little bit of a pattern of, you know, doing a script for script notes and then running that the very next day on the Tuesday stream. But this time it's going to be different because on Saturday the 12th, there's going to be a really big mega stream where a whole bunch of different channels are participating and we're all going to raid into each other, and it's going to be a whole long day of Clock Tower. So we are going to play this script on Saturday.
Yes, we are. We are game 3. You can join us at... It's here somewhere.
Are you looking for the graphic? The
no,
schedule graphic?
I'm actually on the server looking for it. Oh no. Do you have a? Okay, starting at 3 p.m. UK time. that's the and 10 a.m. Eastern. You can join TPI for game 1. Oh, thanks. I'll post.
Yep, I sent you I sent you the image, so we can maybe just get that up on screen as well.
Yep, will do. It is for something that is quite exciting, that you may or may not have heard about by now. I think last time that we spoke about it, we couldn't actually really talk about it much because we were waiting to get the go ahead to do so. But now we can talk about it. The stream is with Clock Tower Con, which is here it is. There you go. Which is going to be a convention held in the United States at some point next year. I'm not sure exactly how many what details are public, but tune into the stream starting at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UK time to see everything that's going on there. We'll be kicking off as you can see, at 2 p.m. Eastern or 7 o'clock UK time, which is 8 o'clock my time in the evening. I will be gulping down my dinner and then making sure to join you all for that game. It'll be super good fun. We're going to be running Monk that we've just been talking about. I don't know if we're running the version that we've been talking about or the updated version. Navin, you and I will need to talk about that off stream at some point. But as you can see, TPI are going first and also closing it out. They will be handing off to Off Meta, who will be passing along to us. We'll be passing along to Skills and Jackie over at Missing Pieces. They'll be passing it on to you, Navian, at Connecticut. I believe that you and Dakota are hosting that one.
That is correct. My usual co-host on Fridays, Demeta, he works on Saturdays, so he won't be available. So it's me streaming, and Dakota will be joining me to co-host.
You'll be passing on to Pattus, and Pattus will be closing out by passing it back to TPI for what is going to be a pretty crazy game.
It is going to be about 12 to 14 hours, yes.
Yeah, not that one game. Hopefully. I mean, it might be. Oh, no, they got some weird shit planned for
the
that
whole
game.
thing.
There is some weird shit planned for that game, though. So that'll be weird. We're not doing too much wacky stuff, but I have made a pledge that I don't know if should I drop the pledge that I've made here, Navian? Or should we leave that as a surprise for Saturday?
I honestly don't even remember what you're talking about right now.
If you look at the server in question, the channel that you got added to, you should be able to see it.
Now let's keep it as a
keep that one as a surprise. Okay. Well, it'll be fun, and it is related to things that we've been talking about already here today. I think that's a little bit of a teaser that I can give you. It will all be good fun. Yeah, so we'll be running Monk. The other people are running various scripts. I'll let them decide how and when they choose to communicate their scripts to you. But yeah, it'll all be a great full day's worth of entertainment for you, I'm sure.
Indeed.
But before that, we are going to be running some games tomorrow. We are going to be running a script that I have written to celebrate Bonfire Night, which was a couple of days ago. It's a Guy Fawkes focused script, and then we'll be running a base script. Not sure exactly which one. We'll let the players and you in chat decide that one. So hop along. So make sure you're here early tomorrow, and you can decide what scripts that we play along with the players. We'll total your votes and see which of the base scripts is the most popular. With all that being said, we are going to call it there. But before we do that, no, we're not. We're going to make one more announcement, which is that 2 weeks today, we will be back here with Script Notes, where we have a very exciting guest, somebody that we've been hoping to have for quite a while now, and his schedule has finally meant that he can join us. And I know that you're looking forward to this as much as I am, Navian.
Yes.
We are going to be joined by TPI's Ed Gabriel, who is going to be answering, who's going to be not talking about any scripts, but will be doing a storytelling and script building. I don't know if workshop is the right word, forum maybe, but we are asking you to help us out with that and to give us some questions that we should ask Ed. You can ask any questions you like. I've made a post or a document which I've just posted in chat that you can go to and submit your questions. The first question is just like your name. You can leave that blank if you want to be anonymous. The second question will be sort of like to give an overview just so that I can help sort it. You can ask any question that you like. We might not get through all of them. We will be focusing on questions that are around script building and as a second choice storytelling. If you have any other questions for Ed, feel free to ask them. The second question is just sort of the topic of the question. Then we have your question, then anything else you want us or Ed to know, and then finally the most important question, obviously, which is what's the best base 3 script. So fill out that form. Give us your questions that we will be putting to TPI's Ed Gabriel 2 weeks today. And yeah, Ed's a very good storyteller. So we will be very interested to see the things that he has to say.
Indeed, I am looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. So yeah, drop your questions there, and we will be back tomorrow. We'll give you the link again tomorrow. If you're in my server, then obviously it'll be posted there. Maybe I'll put it in the stream chat on the unofficial. We'll see about that. But just make sure that you are around and able to join us in 2 weeks because it'll be very exciting. Once again, if you missed the start of this stream, do go back and watch it. It will be on VOD. I'm going to make sure that this one gets uploaded to YouTube because, like, I will save it multiple times because I've lost a few of them. It's really annoying. But this
Yeah, fortunate.
yeah. But we spoke about the origins of the Mint Wars earlier today. So if you're curious about that, then do check that out. We'll be around again on tomorrow and on Friday when hopefully, not definitely, but hopefully, we'll be continuing our pandemic legacy. No promises, because things happen, but we'll see. And yeah, Navian, your plug time.
Well, I will be here tomorrow and on Saturday, and also on Connecticut on Friday and Saturday. That's it. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, cool. So we are done here. Is there anybody that we can raid? I'm not seeing anyone, so we'll probably call that there. Unless anybody knows anybody who should be streaming tonight. Oh, actually, no. No, can't find anyone.
Stephen Dewey will be streaming tonight at 8 p.m., but that's not till for another 2.25 hours.
I'll make sure to check that out then in 2.25 hours. But we're done here, so we'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great week, or have a great evening, I guess. See you tomorrow. And remember to tune in to the mega stream on Saturday, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. GMT, as you can see on screen, and join us at 2 p.m. Eastern or 7 p.m. GMT or 8 o'clock Central European Time. Good night, everyone. See you soon.
Bye.